This is Sheri Elwood, and you're watching the TV Writer Podcast.
Hosted by Gray Jones, the TV Writer Podcast is brought to you by Script Magazine and ScriptMag.com, the leading source for scriptwriting information in print and on the web. And by Final Draft scriptwriting software, the entertainment industry standard for scriptwriting worldwide. My name's Gray Jones, and I want to welcome you to the TV Writer Podcast, partner of Script Magazine, episode 34 for Monday, September 12th, 2011. Well, today I am very, very excited to bring you an interview with producer-writer Sheri Elwood, who is the creator and showrunner of the multi-Gemini winning Call Me Fitz. And when I say multi-Gemini, literally, they just won 7 Gemini Awards. And for our U.S. viewers, that's basically the equivalent of winning 7 Emmy Awards. So that's a pretty big deal up in Canada. You can catch Call Me Fitz on the movie network, HBO Canada in Canada, and also in the States at DirecTV or on Netflix. But we're going to get right to the interview in a moment. First of all, I do want to mention the website, tvwriterpodcast.com, where you can find all of our back episodes. There are lots of great resource links. There's a handy DSLR page where you can find out about how to shoot your own short film or webisodes. There's also a TV Writer Twitter database with over 860 TV writers and continues to climb. Check out those resources. And if you ever have a problem connecting to the site, happens for some reason because of the server, a very small percentage of users can't access the site, you can also go to blip.tv/TV Writer Podcast and find all of the episodes there. So lots of great ways to connect. Speaking about connecting, make sure you do follow me on Twitter, @GrayJones is my handle. That way you can find out about the interviewees who are coming on up. And also, make sure you follow Sheri Elwood on Twitter, @ElwoodInc. That's Inc with a K. But speaking about Sheri Elwood, we're going to roll with her interview right now. Enjoy. This is Gray, and I'm here with Sheri Elwood, writer, producer, and also the creator and showrunner of Gemini winning Call Me Fitz. How you doing, Sheri?
I am excellent, thank you.
And congratulations on the pile of Geminis you won. You just cleaned up.
We did really well. Yeah, we were happy about the nominations, and we were even happier about the wins.
Yeah.
Funny how that math works.
Yeah. And we'll get to Call Me Fitz a little bit later, but kudos, awesome stuff.
Thank you so much.
As a Canadian, I always love successful exports, and I love when something is shot in Canada and goes all around the world. So very, very cool. But hey, you are Canadian.
Born and bred Torontonian, yep. And went to film school in Toronto, and I have family that has roots in Nova Scotia, so I have hung out here quite a bit. So when the opportunity came up to do work out here, and it's happened a few times, I've jumped at the chance because the crews out here are so wonderful.
Mm-hmm. And the locations, beautiful, beautiful country.
It really is. Of course, we spent a lot of time making it look dingier for Fitz, but...
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so you grew up in Toronto. At what point did you know that you wanted to be a filmmaker?
It's something I always knew. I was always obsessed with film and television. And I was the kid, at a very young age could, quote from, Quincy, because I'd be staying up late to watch reruns of Quincy and The Twilight Zone. And I was a visual artist, and I always wrote, and film and television to me seems like the logical mix of the two.
Mm-hmm. And now we almost went to the same school. You started at York and then transferred out of York the year that I started at York. But you went to Ryerson.
I heard you were coming, Gray.
Which I almost went to Ryerson and then went to York because they offered me a scholarship. But tell me about the program at Ryerson.
I was in a film program. There was a big rivalry between RTA and film, and I got into the film program. Was very excited about that, and it was a relatively small class, which was appealing to me. And right out of the gate, they handed us cameras. We ran out with our little Scoopix and made terrible little films, and learned the hard way that the most important thing about telling stories is actually learning how to write and not being able to operate a camera.
Yep.
Yeah.
I wish we had learned that.
I wish we had learned that. Yeah, I mean, in retrospect, I may not have gone to film school. I would have gone and got my English lit degree and reread the classics, perhaps, dabbled in philosophy a little bit to actually, help inform, what eventually became my career as a writer. Yeah, but I still know how to take apart an ARESR and put it back together again. So,
yeah, in the dark.
May one day become handy. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, yeah, actually, I wish now that everybody had the opportunity of working on film, because when you actually see the film strips in your bin, and you know that when you cut, you have to cut right because it's such a pain to get the frames off to fine tune and edit.
Yeah, I spent a lot of hours down on my hands and knees looking for that one frame that I'd lost in my bin. Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
It teaches economy too. I think now because cameras can shoot forever, people think they should.
People think they should.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, and it's especially with digital. It's true. It's not the same economy. You can do a million takes and you can keep shooting, and it's not the same kind of thorough and exhaustive planning that goes into actually knowing that you only have a finite amount of time and film stock. I mean, we would hear rumors of a camera assistant somewhere that had an extra roll of film stock in his freezer, and make that our mission to go make friends with that guy so we could get the film stock.
Yeah, I remember those days, and you knew exactly how much you had, so you planned your shots accordingly.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, so tell me about after film school. You eventually were awarded the National Apprenticeship Award from the Academy of Canadian Film and Television. But what happened in between?
Well, in between, nothing really. I mean, I was awarded that in my fourth year of film school. Mm-hmm. And I think we had 3 or 4 months left before we graduated. And I was working on a thesis project. And part of that project was to go out into the community and take a look at a Canadian company and just figure out how they operated. And so I wandered into Nelvana one day. And Jocelyn Hamilton was one of the producers there. And they sent her down because they heard that there was some crazy blonde girl wandering around the lobby with her bicycle. Uh-huh. And I was looking for, just material on the company. And before I even got the question on that, she said, "Do you want a job?" Because their producer's assistant had been fired that day.
Wow.
She offered me a job on the spot, and so I was a producer's assistant at Nelvana. Well, and that gave me a little bit of the financial luxury to kind of shop around, different productions happening in the city to see who I wanted to apprentice with, because that's what the Academy, award was all about, choosing, someone to apprentice with for 4 or 5 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that is such an ironic story, because when I was at York, same year, around 92, 93, some friends of mine did their documentary project on Nelvana, and it launched their careers as well. Small world.
Yeah. And, Jocelyn now is head of chorus. Mm-hmm. Creative head of chorus, so it's kind of come full circle.
Yeah. But so that opportunity launched you to pretty quickly get into comedy writing.
It did. I eventually, settled on a show that I found interesting. There was a show that was shooting in Toronto. It was first season. They hadn't been green lit yet, I don't think. It was a show that Insight Productions was doing, Ready or Not. Mm-hmm. And they eventually sold it to Showtime. It was a dramedy, which was really appealing to me, and I was really jazzed about a young, writer-creator who had just come out of film school in Los Angeles, Elise Rosenberg. And she said, "Listen, I don't know if we're going to get the green light. You've got this apprenticeship. We can't top it up because we really have no money. Mm-hmm. But if the show is a go, I'll let you do what you want. What do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to be a writer." And so they stuck to their word, Elise Rosenberg and John Brunton, and they put me in the story department immediately.
Wow.
And that's how I started, working under...
And now Pete Mitchell was show running?
Yep. Pete Mitchell and Susan Nielsen was working under Pete, and I was the junior.
Wow.
And I wrote a script first season, and then I went from there.
Now I think it was in an interview you did with Alex Epstein. You mentioned that particular story department, there was a great mentorship there. Yeah,
there was a great mentorship. Well, Pete, of course, who was a famous mentor to writers. Susan was awesome. And Elise as well. I mean, writers aren't known, especially comedy writers, not always the most cheerful, hey, gang, let's all help each other kind of a bunch. But Elise really sort of instilled in me, that if you want to do it, you just need to do it. And I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I mean, this was not a story of walking to a story department and, knocking at it at the ballpark with my first script. I think my first half-hour script that I turned in was, 45 pages or something. And I said, well, if I make the font smaller, maybe they won't notice.
Oh, my.
Yeah, it was that kind of thing. It was really a process. I mean, it's a process that you learn pretty quickly out of shame, pure shame.
Mm-hmm.
But I figured it out after a while.
Now, that was before the days that you could just get TV scripts online. There were not easy ways to learn it back then.
There was no easy way to learn it, and I think that's part of my beef with film school, really. There wasn't really a structured screenwriting program. The message that we needed to have a voice before we wrote scripts was not hammered into us clearly.
Yeah.
There were books that we were given, and we certainly knew screenplay format, but the message that we needed to have something to say before we wrote, the words down on the page was really not something that was taught to us. Well, to me anyway, to my graduating class. And so the actual doing and the learning of an actual story department where, you're challenged on things. Well, what's this scene about? What is this character's motivation? Where are you going with this story? What's your arc? Sitting in a room and actually arcing out an entire season of a show makes you, you bring a lot of yourself to the table, and you really start to learn that stories aren't just about getting, the 27 pages in your act break to fall on page 14. It's about the journey.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would have to say I was on the other side of the city, and our experience at film school was very much the same. It was more about the technique and the technical stuff and not about what you had to say.
Yeah, not at all. Not at all. And I don't know if that's actually something that you can teach in a classroom setting. I'm not sure it's something, I think that's something you kind of have to figure out. Mm-hmm. After years of doing it, like you write tons of spec scripts, and, I remember having this conversation when I was actually offered the job on Ready or Not, because I had come out of film school, and I was like, I don't know if I want to work on a TV show. Like, what do you think? That conversation. Yeah. The friend that I was conferring with was a novelist, was in Toronto for the summer, in from New York, and I think he was, sweating blood with his, second novel, trying to hammer through it, and he said, you know what? Take the job. The voice. Yeah. It may come to you, it may not, but it's going to take a while. So, in the interim, you should really take the job. Mm-hmm. And a voice is not something that just comes to you overnight. It's something that you pick up with experience, and it's really not something that someone else can point out to you. One day you just say, "Oh, this is my taste." You figure out what your taste is, and you marry that with your personality, and cross your fingers that translates to the page. Mm-hmm.
Now, before we move on from Ready or Not, I also noticed in your credits that you did some directing, and you have a second unit director credit on that show. So was directing something that you were thinking you wanted to do as well?
Yeah, directing, directing I find just to be a natural extension of the writing. Mm-hmm. I did do some directing on that show, and a bunch of half-hour directing on a lot of episodic directing on other shows that I've worked on. Yeah, I mean, I'll always be a writer at heart, and directing for me became a way to protect the script. Mm-hmm.
Very, very cool. Now, we probably won't be able to cover everything you worked on, but maybe you can tell me some highlights. The next couple of years you worked on Flash Forward, a Gemini-nominated short film, Ebb and Flow, which I think you shot in Nova Scotia.
I did. Yeah, I mean, well, what I figured out after working in that first story room is that comedy was my thing. At that time, there really wasn't a lot of half-hour adult comedy that wasn't sitcom. And I learned pretty quickly that I did not want to write sitcoms. Mm-hmm. That the dramedy form, the actual single camera, sort of marrying the funny with the cinematic, was the way to go. And there were tween shows that were shot that way. It was really sort of the one sort of format where you were able to be really inventive and really funny with your camera and make little movies every week. And that's what I decided I wanted to do. And I figured that if I could stick with that long enough, I could really hone my craft somewhat under the radar.
Mm-hmm. Well, you went above the radar, though, because you created a whole TV series by 1999.
I did.
So how did that happen?
Well, I had worked on Flash Forward with Daphne Ballin, who was one of the on-staff producers at Alliance Atlantis, and she had read one of my spec scripts, a real supporter of young female writers. Daphne's fantastic. And she called me up and she said, I love your voice. I want a woman to work on this project with me. It was a writer, Bruce Coville, who's got tons and tons of series of books. And this was an idea that he had pitched to Alliance Atlantis. The books did not exist yet. And they decided to do the television component of this book series first.
Mm-hmm.
And so Daphne called me, and I pitched my take on, his one-liner. Just flew me out to L.A., and we pitched it to Fox Family. I actually didn't realize that I was actually the one responsible. I really had no idea how it worked in Los Angeles. I didn't realize that I was the one actually who I was pitching, what the gravity of the situation was, and that I would be the only one in the room speaking.
Wow.
Yeah, I think I learned that as we were walking through the underground parking garage. And I think they didn't tell me on purpose so that I could be the wingnut who they threw into the room, who didn't sound too rehearsed.
Uh-huh.
And we sold it. We sold it in the room, and we went on to do 40 some odd episodes of that show.
Wow, and I was a 6th grade alien.
I was a 6th grade alien, still one of my favorite projects. I had my dream team of writers on that show, and we really wrote it for ourselves. It was like Ed Wood for kids.
Wow.
Yeah, I think more of a hit with the college age kids than actual kids, but we had a lot of fun doing it.
Wow, neat stuff. And but you didn't just do TV, because you also did a feature film, Deeply, with Kirsten Dunst. Yeah,
that was a film script that I wrote and was able to get financed and shot that in Nova Scotia in 2000. That was really fun. That was a crazy, crazy, crazy project. It was a very big, ambitious period piece, and we pulled it off. And it was a far cry from my comedy writing, but a lot of fun nonetheless, and a big challenge as a director. And it really made me sort of reassess the world of independent film, because it really is 2 years of your life once you step onto set, and add 2 years to that. That was it was a lot of fun, but a long process.
Yeah. Well, I mean, kudos for directing it as well, and it premiered to a 4-star review at the Toronto International Film Festival, which is going on right now, actually. It
did. That was definitely one of the thrills of my career, having film at the Toronto Film Festival, for sure. We had a big, great splashy screening. It was great, and I got to travel around the world with that film to just various festivals. So that was a lot of fun.
Great stuff. And then you also created another series, Beta Males, for CW. Tell me about that one.
Well, that one, we didn't actually get to shoot that one, unfortunately, but that was a show this is a sad and interesting story, actually. It was a show that I pitched. That was my second pitch that I took out in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
After I'd got my U.S. agent. My first U.S. agent, and we sold it to the CW, and the CW was just kind of finding their feet at that point. And so it was pitched as I was working with Ryan and Sean First, who are kind of indie producer idols of mine, who did The Matador and The Cooler and Owning Mahoney. Really great guys. And they had just signed a deal with Lionsgate to do television projects. And I think I was one of the first shows that they picked up. So we took that show out, an edgy comedy show about 3 slacker husbands hanging out while they're about gender politics, and we sold it to the CW, and I said, you know what this show is? I mean, this is like an edgy show about these, guys hanging around all day, getting into trouble. And they're like, God, we'd love it. We'd love it. A female voice and male characters. One of the first big notes that they gave me was, can we make the men women, and can they be black?
No.
I promise you.
Oh my goodness.
There's something I'm paraphrasing. It was a while ago now, and of course I said sure, because I really wanted to make the show. That's actually the lesson in all of this. I said, okay, sure. I'm a pretty affable person. I'll make a couple of tweaks.
A couple of tweaks.
Couple of tweaks. Yeah. I know Lionsgate was horrified by that. They're like,
oh my.
The home of edgy cable. So, they were just finding their voice. I mean, it's now the home of Gossip Girl, so in retrospect, it really wasn't the perfect home for beta males. Beta males will rise again.
Wow. And then after that, you directed Black Hole High, you wrote for 15 Love. You were supervising producer on The Jane Show. You also wrote a TV movie, The Mrs. Claus. Tell me about that time. What was going on there?
I was having babies.
Okay.
Yeah, I was having babies and dragging little infants around with me to various meetings and male-dominated story rooms. And I to this day, I my comedy posse horrified, I think, when I would show up with a small child hanging off a breast. But they were accepting. I was doing a lot of stuff at that time, but a lot of stuff that allowed me to work from home.
Yeah, working from home rocks.
Working from home totally rocks.
Yeah, definitely does.
Which is one of the downsides of directing. I still have not figured out a way for them to let me do it from home. Working on it. George Lucas does it.
Yeah, he does. And actually, Rob Thomas, I just interviewed him last week. The show Party Down.
Yeah, which I love.
The pilot of that was shot in his house.
Well, there you go. See, there you go.
Yeah. So it does happen. You got to be clever, though. Well, tell me about writing a TV movie, because that's different than the other stuff that you did.
Yeah, the TV movie was, well, first of all, it was a Christmas movie, which I was suspect of. Anything holiday themed, I'm like, I don't know. But I said I want to give it a twist. I mean, it was a romantic comedy. I wrote it as a feature. I developed that with Madhouse Entertainment, my lit management company. We wrote it as a feature, and we were approached by a producer who was doing TV movies at the time, and I learned very quickly that the same number of pages does not a TV movie make, because the first thing that happens, they're like, okay, we're shooting it in 13 days.
Wow.
So that experience was actually quite painful as you watch a script, which we're all actually quite proud of, kind of get hacked away, and scenes being shot in one take. I think the age of TV movies aren't what they used to be. Yeah, so that was tricky, that one.
Wow.
And I think of anything that I've ever written, they rerun that. I mean, I think my kids have seen that movie 15 times. Every Christmas.
I'll have to watch for that this Christmas.
That's the one they keep playing. Yeah.
Very cool.
Very good performances.
And then after that came something that I think was pretty significant for you, which was Defying Gravity. Tell me about that one.
Yeah, Defying. Well, Jim Perriott, who's one of the EPs on Grey's Anatomy, created that show. And he sent out feelers for writers, and he got his hands on a spec feature script that I wrote, Dirty Sweet, which was a comedy about a young female physicist, and there's a time travel element, edgy and fun, and he read that script, and I got called in for a meeting, and he hired me.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was helping run the room on that show.
Great stuff. And now that was in L.A.,
That was in LA. So
maybe you could tell me a little bit about that room and just perhaps a little about how U.S. rooms, particularly LA, compare to the Canadian staffs.
Well, they don't really differ all that much. There are more assistants. There's usually more people in the room. I think we had 8 writers on staff on that show, plus Jim. The credits of the other writers in the room were, far more recognizable, I think, than some of my Canadian comrades. But it really works the same way. It really, really does. I mean, we had a lot more time. It's just the process is a little more luxurious in terms of time. We had months and months and months to talk character on that show and talk arcs and slowly, get our heads into the world. I mean, it was a show about space travel, and none of us were science writers, and so we had a ton of time to, watch all the space movies, read. I mean, I think I read a dozen books.
Wow.
Yeah, it was just really the luxury of time more than anything. One of the differences, other than Jim maybe, is that I think because the talent pool in Los Angeles is so large, people just don't have as many credits as we do in Canada. Like a lot of my peers, I mean, we've all been working for years and years and years and have very long resumes. Whereas in Los Angeles, the other writers in the room who, similar vintage, may have only worked on 3 shows, 4 shows kind of thing.
Something else I noticed talking to Canadian and U.S. writers is that Canadian writers are, generally speaking, far more likely to have worked in features, in TV movies, and a variety of different types of shows, perhaps even different genres. Like you might have somebody floating between drama and comedy, where my experience with LA writers is that they tend to be...
They pigeonhole you. Yeah, because just because there's so many of them. Like, you need to... This is this is Sheri Elwood. She writes, edgy dramedy. That's my box. In Los Angeles, whereas here, yes, I've done features, I've done kids, I've done adult, I've done TV movies, I've done, hours, I've done half hours. It's we come to the table there with so much breadth. Not necessarily good breadth, but definitely a lot more breadth.
Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit about what you learned on that show. I know in another interview I saw you said that you learned quite a bit working with Jim Perriott.
Well, I learned that, plot is not God. Everything needs to come from character. You're either doing a procedural that's driven by plot turns that you've seen a million times, or you're doing a show where you're really invested in the lives of, the people whose stories that you're telling. And, that's the one thing that he drove into us again and again. Because, there was every second day we were pitching Ghost Ship.
Mm-hmm.
They're in space, and they think they see, and Jim would be like, no. Asteroid? No. We weren't really allowed to pitch those shows. He just did not want to hear them because he said, what's our theme here? What are our characters doing? How are they feeling? What's the attitude? Where are we going with this? Yeah, you're pitching me this great, moment here, but where's it going to go 5 episodes from here? So it was about layers, and it was about the slow burn, not giving away too much in the first episode, designing hooks that will keep people coming back, but more importantly, not plot hooks, emotional hooks. You think that's obvious, but it's you forget because it's so fun. You're standing there, you've got your dry erase marker in your hand, and you want to get plot up there on the board. But unless there's some underpinning, the plot doesn't mean anything. And that's something that I really try to tell my writers on Fitz. Just remind myself of.
Mm-hmm.
You're really starting from scratch every time you're starting a new script, and that's always. And I think my rule of thumb is you can be as wacky as you want, you can be as crazy as you want, if there's a really strong, grounded emotional underpinning.
Very cool. Well, I think one of the best ways to do that is to put your family on screen, and that's what you did with Call Me Fitz. Tell me about creating Call Me Fitz.
Don't tell them. Well, Call Me Fitz is really my dream project. That was my comedy writing sample. That was my writing sample for years. I wrote it on spec, developed the show on spec. I had a Bible, had a script, and it's the script that got me a lot of work. Pitched it around a little bit, and was always met with, we really love the writing. What else do you got? Because Fitz is so, can you make him a little less unlikable? Can you make him a bit nicer? I'm like, yeah, it's about a morally bankrupt guy. That's what the show's about. Or can you lose the conscience? I'm like, well, no. And I'd worked on a few projects sort of leading up to the pitching of Fitz that maybe didn't fully see, their potential wasn't realized. And it's, I don't know. This is the one I didn't want to do it unless I was going to be able to do it the way I wanted to do it.
And so what changed? What turned the light on for Fitz?
Well, the American writers' strike for one, because I was kicking around Toronto and it was the winter, and I was called. A few companies had tried to option Fitz, and there were some wacky casting ideas that came attached to those offers, and I didn't feel right. And I got a call from Amaze, Taza, Lawrence, and Mike Souther, who I kind of knew, casually from around, but didn't really know their work. And they called me and they said, "Listen, just come out and have lunch with us. What do you got? We really want to work with you." And I said, well, I do have this one thing. I'll send it to you and, see what you think. They loved it and had heard through some various meetings that TMN Movie Central was looking to get into half-hour comedy. And so they brought the project to them, and it was a very fast turnaround. Had a great meeting with them, and they really loved the script, and they said, let's do it.
And now in the States,
it's DirecTV, the AudienceNet, formerly the 101 channel. Yeah.
Very, very cool.
Yeah, same channel that has the Damages and Friday Night Lights, and then little old us. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and there's been a lot of discussion about writing for network and writing for cable. Now, with this Canadian network, would you say it's most like writing for cable? Like, would it be like writing for HBO in the States?
Yes, exactly the same. Yeah.
So you have total freedom, license to go where you want to go.
I do. I really do. They're my partners, and, we talk story and we talk character, and they have fantastic input, and, I aim to please, but mostly they're very trusting of us, very trusting of me. They support the vision of the show, and this is a very specific kind of show. The characters are very specific. And, when there are notes, they're mostly the logic notes. This is not quite clear enough, or maybe you want to push this moment a little harder just to make sure we're telling the story in the best possible way. We're so inside the show that sometimes, we miss the odd thing. But that's really the extent of it. I mean, it's truly the dream position to be in, to be doing a cable show with these guys.
Very, very cool. And I mean, for this particular show, you really need that.
You think?
Yeah.
We do. I mean, that's just the truth. I mean, we had a lot of admirers as I was pitching this show, but I was like, yeah, well, we can't put on this network. I mean, we pitched it to effects in the States, and they said, yeah, this is too edgy for us.
Yeah. Well, and so tell me then, this is your dream job, but you're not only show running, you're writing, and you are also directing. So tell me how that works.
Well, it's a juggle. It's for sure a juggle. I mean, we've got enough lead time on this show that, we go to camera tomorrow. We're shooting our first little, B unit piece tomorrow. We go full throttle on Monday, but, we've got 9 scripts already.
Wow.
Before we've even shot anything. So, I try to front load. We started the writer's room in early April, and I've got a very, very tight team working for me. I started out with a bigger room of writers, and it was the first time I've really show run to this extent, and sort of had to find what worked for the show and what worked for me. And for me, my style is a smaller, tighter team of writers, and we motor. We motor. And we hammer out these scripts, and the more scripts we have in advance, the more we can work on the nuance of the characters and the arcs and punch up.
Very, very cool.
Yeah.
And you run post from your house, so that helps too.
And I run post from my house, and I only direct at the end, and then everybody's too burnt out to really, protest too much. So I'm directing the last block. And, I've surrounded myself with a really great team of people that allows me to do that.
Very, very cool. And you won, 7 Gemini Awards this time?
We won 7, yeah.
Wow. Very, very cool. And you're writing, so you're starting to shoot season 3 right now.
Yeah, it's season 3. Season 2 goes to air on the 25th of September. In November, I think it's November 17th on DirecTV. So they're a little bit behind us, but they've got seasons 2 and 3. So we'll be with them for a little while longer. Very, very cool. And, yeah.
And then also, you signed a blind development deal with Jerry Bruckheimer Television.
Wow, you are a very well-researched man. Yeah, this is a recent thing. Jerry's a fan of Fitz.
Really?
Yeah. Jerry, he got a hold of Fitz, and he a feature script of mine, and called me in for a meeting, and yeah, so I'm doing a show with them, which is very exciting.
Very, very cool. And can you tell me anything about that?
I cannot. I cannot. Yeah, it's in my wheelhouse, though. Let's put it that way. It's an idea that I pitched to them, and I'm really excited about it. I mean, I'm fully involved in Fitz right now, so this is a future project.
Wow.
Yeah, really, really excited about it. They're very good people.
Very, very cool. Well, I guess we're coming close to the end here, but what we usually do at this point is ask breaking in tips. And so if you spoke to somebody, not necessarily your younger self, but somebody right now who is young and wanting to break into TV, what would you advise them to do?
I would advise them to write. I mean, the most important thing is to get a really fantastic spec writing sample. Not spec from another show, but an original spec. To really figure out what their vibe is, what they're interested in, what you can bring. I mean, when I'm hiring people for the writer's room, I'm not hiring people to mimic my voice necessarily, because all scripts will eventually go through my computer. I'm hiring them because they bring something specific to the table. You know, I think with younger writers, they don't necessarily have the confidence to think they actually have anything to contribute. And so having that spec script, an original piece of material, is extremely important.
And now you have said several times that people got wind of you through your feature specs, and so what kind of specs do you like to read yourself?
I'm not a genre snob. I honestly, good storytelling is good storytelling, and whether it's a film. I mean, every film's going to wind up on television. Actually, no, every film's going to wind up, someone's going to be watching it on their iPhone. I mean, I'm not a genre fan. It's the story. It's just the quality of the writing. I mean, my co-EP, Dennis Heaton, who's an absolute rock star, I hired Dennis because I read, a 5-page webisode that he wrote.
Really?
Like within the first 2 pages of his webisode script, I knew he was right for my show.
Wow.
Yeah, because his voice is very specific, and I knew that this was someone who would understand the world of Fitz. And I don't think I read anything else of Dennis's. And I made a few calls to make sure that he wasn't a serial killer. I'm still waiting for people to return those calls. But the writing was very strong, so I rolled the dice with him. Yeah, it worked out well.
Wow, very
cool.
So
my biggest tip is to have a kick-ass writing sample, and if you have that, it will rise to the top, and people will find you, and there are agents and managers and people like me who are, desperate for great writers. I mean, the more great writers I have in my room, the less work that I have to do. So it's really a selfish thing. So everyone get out there and write good scripts.
Very, very cool. And Elwood Inc. is your Twitter handle?
Elwood Inc. my Twitter. Yeah, I need Twitter friends. I'm kind of new to Twitter, so I'm not. It's a bit paltry right now.
Elwood Inc. with a K. So everybody who listens to this podcast, make sure you follow Sheri on Twitter.
Follow me.
Yeah.
Send me cool stuff to look at. Yeah.
And find Call Me Fitz. Now, I was a little disappointed it wasn't on Netflix.
Oh, I think we are, Gray. We're totally on Netflix.
Oh, in the States?
Oh, in the U.S. Yeah, U.S.
I wish Canadian Netflix would catch up. But if it is on Netflix in the States, then very easy for you to find Call Me Fitz. Make sure you watch it and get ready for season 2, which is coming, and season 3 after that. So that's about all I have, unless there's anything you would like to add.
That is it. Thank you so much for inviting me on your show. I'm a huge fan.
Cool. Well, I appreciate you taking the time. I know it's quite late there, and you've got a few things to do before bed, so I'll let you go, but I really appreciate you taking this time, and congratulations again on all of those Geminis. Very well deserved.
Thank you so much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Hosted by Gray Jones, the TV Writer Podcast is brought to you by Script Magazine and ScriptMag.com, the leading source for script writing information in print and on the web, and by Final Draft script writing software, the entertainment industry standard for script writing worldwide.